Welcome to this edition of African Parks here on MBC, where we are featuring some of the parks or protected areas that are being managed by African Parks here in Malawi. These are Majete Wildlife Reserve in Chikwawa, Liwonde National Park in Machinga, Mangwachi Forest, and of course Nkoda Wildlife Reserve, where we are there to focus on what is happening in those particular areas. And again, the focus is to engage communities, how they are benefiting from these parks, and what's the relationship between the parks and the communities that they serve, that are around these particular protected areas. So here in Chikwawa, I am here at Majete Wildlife Reserve, and I'm privileged in this edition that I have Parks Manager for Majete Wildlife Reserve, that's John Adendorff. Welcome to the program, Mr. John Adendorff.
Thank you very much.
We're here once again. We sat here about 4 years ago, where you were giving me the journey of African Parks and Majete Wildlife Reserve here in Chikwawa. 4 years forward, and this is around 4 years now. How has been the story of Majete Wildlife Reserve? Are you still the big five, or you've gone back to big four or big three?
No, we continue to improve this reserve, and it's an incredible story. Majete has got international status now and a reputation all over the world. Malawi must be very proud of this park. We believe we're the flagship park in Malawi. There's no other park can compete with us. Tourism is showing that to us as well. It's improving quite a bit after COVID, which really set us back. The last time we spoke, we didn't realize COVID would come along and destroy our tourism. But it gave us time to keep improving Majete. And we not only have the big five, we've got more cheetah now, we've introduced wild dog, we've introduced more giraffe. The place is in a far better place than 4 years ago, and that's been the story all the way from 2003, where things were really bad and there was hardly any animals left in Majete, and today we sit with close to 14,000 animals in Majete and doing extremely well.
I hear this is one of the first parks that African Parks adopted as a company. Is that true? And so far, where are you in Malawi and of course outside this country?
So we must thank Malawi government first and foremost. They're our partners in this. We partners to the Malawi government. We run this park on behalf of the Malawi government. So what also needs to be made clear, we are a non-profit organization, so everything we do stays in Malawi and it goes into the investment in Majete and making sure Majete is the best reserve in Africa. But we've come a long way. African Parks started off, there was 4 gentlemen, I won't mention all their names, but they approached the Malawi government and for a partnership agreement. We initially were interested in Liwonde. We couldn't get Liwonde, and Majete was given to us.
Why you couldn't get
We had to prove ourselves. We couldn't take the flagship park in Malawi. We had to prove ourselves in Majete, which was a reserve.
By then, Liwonde National Park was a flagship.
Definitely, Liwonde, and there's some really key parks in Malawi that are awesome parks. And Majete was a reserve. It's not a national park, eh?
Yeah.
So
what's the difference between a reserve and a national park?
It's in the proclamation. The legal status is different. So it's a technicality.
Okay.
Majete meets all the criteria for a national park, and maybe in time we can get Majete proclaimed as a national park. But we do. We compete at national park level for sure. We believe in Majete. We are the flagship park in Malawi at the moment, and not just in Malawi. This story is an incredible story of hope and success. Nowhere in Africa can you duplicate what we've done here. It's happened with the communities that have been involved. It's happened with a lot of involvement from different stakeholders, but we've made an incredible success story out of this. So maybe in time to come it'll get its proclamation as a national park and it'll get its due status, but that's not important. That's a technicality.
Okay.
The park itself functions incredibly well, and what's really nice about this reserve is the close community liaison that we have. So people work very closely with us. They participate. Majete Wildlife Reserve Association is out there. We have the JLC meetings that we have with the government participation. So there's so many structures in place that make sure that we're all talking to each other and everybody feels involved in the management of this reserve.
Now, in terms of, you mentioned about community involvement, working together with communities that are around this particular wildlife reserve, that's Majete Wildlife Reserve. Are they now able to understand the significance of this place, and what's the relationship between you as park or as wildlife reserve and the communities that are around this particular area?
So generally, I would say 99% good, and there's always going to be a small element that wants to utilize it for poaching and that type of thing. But I would go as far as to say it's one of the best relations in Africa as far as communities adopting a reserve. You know, we need to make sure people feel like they're ambassadors to the reserve. They take ownership and they take great pride in the reserve. And we see that out there. If you move in amongst the communities, you're welcomed into the communities. There's no animosity at all. So it's all welcoming environment, and we share a lot. We create a lot of employment in Majete as well. As we speak, out of the 167 positions, I would say 90% of those positions come from the communities around Majete. And then we also create a lot of casual work. There's a big casual workforce in Majete. Up to 600 people get appointed a year to work in Majete. The economy around Majete then benefits. You know, we invest about $2.2 million US a year into the reserve, and that goes back to the people. It goes, you know, ultimately it creates jobs, it creates infrastructure, and it helps Malawi become a premier tourism destination in future as well.
September has been a month that where the whole world commemorates or remembers the importance of tourism in the particular countries. What has been your experience so far in September, or tourism aspect in Malawi? More especially, start with local tourism. Are people in Malawi interested to come and see what's happening in this particular place?
We find there's an increase in day visitors, especially. So we're likely to go back to our pre-COVID figures, and we'll get about 9,000 visitors to Majete. And a lot of those are Malawians visiting the park. What we do want to see is Malawians spending time in the reserve and using our accommodation and really getting to know Majete. But there's definitely, we see it year on year, there's a massive improvement, and people have an urge to get out to these wilderness areas. There's not much left in Africa, you know, of these wild destinations where you can see the big five and you can see all the big predators. Majete is the place that we can offer that. So we see that change definitely taking place. You know, this last month was our best month ever in the history of Majete. Even though other places in Malawi are struggling, Majete managed to have an income of $94,000 US, which is good. Ultimately, we'd like to see this reserve sustainable, and in time, in the next 5 years or so, we would like to be able to generate enough money to actually run the reserve that we don't rely on donor funding. And that's going to come from Malawians supporting. We can't ever sit in a situation where we're totally reliant on international visitors. We need to know that Malawians support their parks and adopt their parks, and that way we will reach sustainability in future.
When you say big five, some people have wondered, what does that mean? What kind of animals are contained in the terminology, the big five? So
we have the rhinos, the buffalo, the elephant, the lions, and the leopard are the big five. And then look, it's a tourism ploy. It's one way to, those are the animals that, it comes from a hunting background where people used to hunt in Africa, and they would go for those 5 species of animals. They're generally quite dangerous as well in context. They're not really. You can enter Majete. We haven't had an incident here in years where anybody's been threatened, so people are safe when they come here. But the big five are token species. People talk about those animals and they want to see them. If you're a tourist, international tourist, you demand to see the big five. And all of our big five are doing very well in Majete. You can see them, they're there to be seen. And then we've added species like wild dog, which is one of the most endangered species on the continent. It's one of the most threatened species, and those are doing well. We brought in 6, we're now up to 15 animals. We brought in giraffes, one of the very few places in Malawi where you can see giraffe. There's not many other, none of the other government reserves you will see giraffe. This is the only place in Malawi you can see them, and we're sitting with 25 giraffe in Malawi at the moment, so, or in Majete. It's a really incredible place to just see a diversity of animals, from this impala all the way up to the lions, to the elephant, to the buffalo, and most probably at the top of it all, most people want to see lions. When they come to the reserve, they want to see lions.
Yeah.
We've grown from a very small population. There's 44 lions in Majete right now. Your chances are very good. Last night, guests were seeing lions on game drives. So if you come and spend an evening with us, we virtually guarantee you seeing lions in the park.
How big is this Majete Wildlife Reserve? I'm asking that question considering that if you bring a lot of animals and the population is high, won't be any conflict amongst animals themselves. What about communities around you? Are they not threatened by the competition or conflict that is within the park?
No, very good question. And human-wildlife conflict is the quickest way to lose your community. So we ensure that our fences, we've got a very good fence around Majete. We don't have breakouts. We avoid breakouts at all costs. This reserve hasn't had an elephant breakout in about 4 or 5 years now. We've had odd cheetah breakout, but generally we just don't have breakouts. We've got 44 people managing our fence every day and making sure the fence is in good order. And that's one way of eliminating that human-wildlife conflict. And then from there, so that's why you have predators. We're trying to restore natural systems.
Yeah.
So your predators will take out the excessive animals. And then species like elephant, that's why you saw recently Kusungu, they moved elephants to Kusungu from Lwande. We unfortunately would have to intervene with elephant, but our elephant numbers are not that high yet. So when we get to a point where we have to move them, we work closely with government and we'll find areas to restock in Malawi. So this park creates, it's a sink where we can actually remove animals and restock other areas in Malawi. We've just done it recently we added some more animals to Lwande and we gave some more animals to Nkorakora as well. And then, Lwande gave animals to Kusungu, the elephants. So yeah, that's not all bad. It means we can take these animals out and we can put them in reserves that are struggling and restock those reserves.
So you got land animals and you got also Shiri River here within the park. How are they talking to each other?
So the Shiri River is call it the aquatic side of things, and you've got the crocodiles, the hippos, you've got the fish species that need to be conserved. And yes, they've got predators there, like the crocodile prey on the antelope. So, and it's all natural. That you want that system taking place where it's the natural ecological processes are in sync and always working in sync as such. So yeah, the river's 13 kilometers of river, beautiful Shiri like it was 100 years ago. A lot of the Shiri in Malawi has been disturbed. A lot of farmlands right up against the rivers. Yeah, you still see the massive trees, the wildlife coming down to the river to drink. They then have that interaction with the crocodiles and the hippo. There's a little bit of competition that takes place, but that's been happening for thousands of years. It's all good. It's the one place where you can see nature functioning totally in its natural environment.
What about game hunting? Well, here in Malawi it's illegal to do game hunting. Is there any good reason that we can't go that particular way of game hunting? And what is game hunting for the sake of a viewer or listener who doesn't know what game hunting is all about?
Hunting and tourism often don't work hand in hand. So
how?
No, the person who comes to see wildlife, he doesn't want to know the animals are actually being shot and hunted. So it's always a difficult one, and all over Africa they face this challenge. You either do hunting or you do tourism, but very seldom you see tourism and hunting go hand in hand. Especially,
but game hunting is a lot of money.
There's a lot of money, but then you need to make a decision: are you going to hunt or are you going to do tourism? Your international market, which most of your money comes from, your international visitors are very much against hunting. So if you had to do that, you would lose a big sector of your market, and then you would have to re-strategize how you want to do things. Generally in Malawi, the government gives us a criteria in how we work, and hunting's not part of that criteria. It's not a negotiation we've had with government, the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. We try and conserve. A lot of the species are at huge risk of going extinct, and at this stage we just conserve and try and improve the status of those species rather than hunt them. And that's why we fight against poaching in a reserve. We're sitting here right at the law enforcement offices. My team on a daily basis are trying to fight poaching, and I think it would be against the way we do things if we allowed hunting, but yet the poacher can't come in and hunt. So, you know, we've also got to consider that. And we're definitely not considering hunting as African parks. We purely focus on returning the systems to their natural functionality.
Having said that, I want us to go up there. I've seen, what do you call those ones? The guns that...
Those muzzleloaders.
Oh, that's muzzleloaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go and see them there closer, and then you told me the story around that, and how has that reduced, or how has that helped in terms of conservation of animals here in the park. Remember, you are watching African Parks Corner here on MBC. My name is Emmanuel Tuala, and I'm here with Parks Manager for the Majete Wildlife Reserve, and we're talking about conservation and the engagement with communities, or the benefits that communities are getting out of this particular park. We'll be back after this short break. Remember, you're watching African Parks Corner here on MBC, and as I said, I have Mr. John. So I want us to go and see these muzzleloaders. What is the story about these things? And here I also see, what, these are traps?
These are wire snares. Wire snares.
Wire snares.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about this first of all.
So muzzleloaders are very much part of the landscape and traditional way of hunting in this part of the world, and it was used for a very long time. Muzzleloaders come back from the 1800s.
Yeah.
They were used on sailing ships, but Malawi people have got a very ingenious way of doing it, and they make their own rifles. So these are all handmade by community members to hunt wildlife, and most of them, we call them poachers because this is a protected area. If you get caught with this in the reserve, you get arrested, and you will go to jail, and your weapon will be confiscated. These weapons could also be used to do harm to fellow citizens or people, so they're definitely not part of the landscape. It's illegal to own these without being licensed in Malawi.
Were these really working?
They were all working. So they use a form of gunpowder that they make themselves, and then they use anything from reed bar, which they cut into small sections. They stuff it down the barrel. They put some toilet paper in, and then they fire it. It can be dangerous to the operator as well.
Okay.
But this is only a very small portion of what must be removed. There are thousands of these weapons over the years.
How did they come to this place?
So each one of these is a poacher's arrest. The people that have been arrested that represent every one of these. Some of them were handed in legally as well. We had a amnesty period where we said to people, if you've got one in your possession, please hand it in. And then that happened. A lot of people handed in their weapons. But yeah, just in the last week or two, we've recovered weapons again. They keep coming. There's always going to be people out there that want to poach for bushmeat, and it gets sold on the local in the local markets. But these rifles can kill anything up to an elephant. It depends how potent. Yeah, they can be quite potent. They're horrible things. They have to get quite close to the animals. They shoot in the body mostly. They normally put 1 or 2 pellets inside, so this thing spreads. It's got quite a big area that it hits. But Mr. Moyo will come speak to you just now. Is a legend in this part of the world, and he can explain a lot about these as well. And then over there,
so these are wire snares.
Yeah. So these snares are really the honestly, they're disgusting in how they operate. They tie them to trees, they put them on game paths where game frequent the areas, and the animals walk into them and normally get caught around the head or around the body, and they die a horrible death. If they're not quickly relieved, these animals will actually, we find them dead and they're busy dying on site. Unfortunately, this is the preferred method. Using snares is definitely the way most people will operate. You'll see some horrible snares here made of cable. They can kill an elephant with this. They can take an elephant's leg off. Some of these have been responsible for taking out rhino in the one day especially. Luckily in Machete we've never lost a rhino. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of our law enforcement team and the work they do. We have very little poaching that takes place in Majete. A lot of it's now subsistence, but historically this place was a mess. It was carnage, and we had a lot of people poaching in the area. If you go around the corner, you'll also see a very lethal way of poaching as well.
Oh yeah, here, right here.
Which is the gin traps.
So what do you call this?
They're called gin traps, and they leg holes that they get put on animal paths, get covered, get camouflaged, and then the animals walk down the path and they get caught in the leg. Some of these, if you look carefully, you'll even find bone left inside inside the gin trap. It's made from vehicle coil springs or the leaf springs on a vehicle, or you can buy these traps commercially. We've had the odd ranger being caught in these as well. They are lethal. They got horrible spikes in the jaw itself, and it's meant to do serious damage and hold on to you and not release you. We find a lot of this in Malawi, a lot of gin traps being used as a means of poaching. But I'm sure Mr. Moya, who's now walked in, can actually explain a lot more about this.
So tell me about his background.
This man is a legend in Majete. He's been here for many, many years. He actually started his career the same time I started mine in South Africa in 1993. We've walked the same path. But Tizolo is the one person in Majete who can tell you about how bad it was and how incredible this place has recovered over time. So he's the man and he's the legend of Majete.
Welcome, Mr. Moyo. Yeah, tell us about, John was just telling me about these things. Do you remember when you got them, did you have amnesty here? Some people just bring them on their own, or you were arresting people to get these things here?
Yeah, it's both. These weapons, we confiscated them since African Parks start managing Majete Wildlife Reserve in 2003. More especially from 2005, 2006, 2007 is when we confiscated a lot of this muzzleloading guns, gin traps outside, and also wire snares. And yes, there was a time where people were advised to surrender these guns voluntarily without maybe opening a case against them. So in that period, most of people surrender their guns on their own, and some wire snares and also gin traps.
Are they still using these weapons up to now, or what's now the status of poaching from communities?
Yeah, poaching, I can say at the moment it's very low, very low. Just a few people, they are still using them, but compared to
what it used to be.
No. That time, from 2001, 2003, 2004, there was a lot of this. But this time around, nothing. Just a few of them, they are still using them.
No, thank you so much. Yes. That's Mr. Moyo there, one of the long-serving member of African Parks here at Majete Wildlife Reserve, talking to us in the African Parks Corner here on MBC. This is edition that we bring to you just to showcase what's happening in our parks here in Malawi. These are parks that are being run on our behalf. These are Luonde National Park, Mangochi Forest, Kota Wildlife Reserve, and again this one Majete Wildlife Reserve here in Chikwawa. My name is Emmanuel Tuala. Till next time, it's goodbye and enjoy the rest of our programming.